Welcome to Solar Oregon's How to Go Solar Plus Storage. My name is Nicole, and I am a program manager at the nonprofit Solar Oregon. This is our recurring workshop that we've been delivering to home and business owners across the state for over 15 years. Our mission is to arm you as a consumer with information you need to make good and informed choices about solar and/or battery storage. Solar has changed significantly in the past decade and a half, and we update this workshop regularly. We'll also have a Q&A at the end, so thank you all for joining us today. Here's a quick look at our agenda. We'll start by taking a look at how solar works. We'll see the components in the system, learn about a process called net metering that allows you to get credit for energy you export to the electrical grid, and also see how solar saves you money on your utility bills. Then we'll take a look at how solar contractors assess your home. We'll see common issues with potential sites that can increase the cost of a solar installation or that can prevent you from going solar. We'll take a tour through the exciting topic of home battery storage. And then we'll learn about the available incentives, go through some example budgets, and then talk a little bit about the contractor selection process. And we are excited to have you here today so that we can get your questions answered about solar and home battery storage. Just a little bit about Solar Oregon. We are a 501(c) nonprofit, and we encourage solar and storage adoption and have been doing this for over 43 years. We provide reliable and impartial consumer education. We work to build a clean energy community, and we perform outreach and some policy advocacy. We also host Solarize campaigns, solar tours, zero energy showcases, and expert panel discussions on a range of topics related to solar. We are a member-based nonprofit, so thank you to all our existing members. Your support makes our educational programming possible. If you are not a member, please consider joining. And members do receive special discounts at our annual events like our Solar Winery and Brew Tour, as well as our Go Zero Tour. And then we are going to add those links to resources in the chat one more time, just to make sure that everybody has gotten them. And those have some links to our website, as well as great resources for solar and storage. We do have an upcoming event actually tonight. It's our annual meeting. There are still tickets available, so if you're interested in that, head to our website or our Eventbrite and you can find tickets there. This workshop series is supported by the Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit established in 2002 that provides resources to help enable customers of investor-owned utilities in our state to use energy efficiently and gain access to renewable energy. They offer key incentives for solar installation, and in 2002, were authorized by the legislature to offer an incentive for battery storage, which is really exciting because that makes that cost a little bit more accessible. So thank you, Energy Trust. And before we get into the details, just some quick housekeeping. As you think of any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. It'll be in your toolbar. You'll see a little Q&A icon. And then, just any questions you might have about solar or storage, please put them in there. We'll do the Q&A at the end. If you do put questions in the chat, we might miss them. So just refer to that Q&A. And before we get started, we're gonna just launch a couple polls that help us understand where you're joining from today and what your understanding is of solar and storage. So I will get those rolling now. Okay, the first one is about where you're joining from today. Great. Seems like we have a group from all across the state today, so that's really exciting. And then the next poll is going to be demographics. I'm launching that now. Right. And the next poll is just to see what your familiarity is with incentives. Thank you again for all taking that time. At the end of this workshop, we will have a post-event survey that we do as another poll, just to see what you thought of today, so we can keep improving our educational offerings through next year. Great, so now we'll jump right into it. This slide here shows the components in a solar system. You can see the house in the middle of the diagram, and sunlight is striking solar panels, labeled here as photovoltaic panels. It produces a voltage of electricity. This is a special type of electricity called DC, or direct current, and that is different from the AC, or alternating current, that our homes use in our outlets and appliances. So that's why we have another special device shown on this here diagram, that is an inverter or a microinverter. Both are pretty widely used in Oregon, and the microinverters we'll talk a little bit more about later, just because those are a little bit newer. And then, so once your inverters convert the DC to the AC, that electricity will flow into your electrical panel or breaker box, and then into the circuits in your home, where it can power your lights, appliances, and charge an electric vehicle. And then if your solar system is producing more electricity at any given moment, the excess electricity will flow back out onto the grid, where it can be used by other homes and businesses. And at moments when you need more electricity than you're producing, you can still purchase that energy from the grid, because this is a grid-tied solar system. So when you go solar, you get a special utility meter installed that measures the flow of electricity in both directions. This allows you to use a system called net metering, which gives you credits for the electricity you export to the grid, and will also measure what you import from the grid. And that's really all there is in a solar system. So pretty simple and pretty low maintenance. And we'll talk a little bit more about those inverters now. So we talked about how inverters will convert the DC to AC, so it can be used by your home. The white box in the image on the left is a string inverter, and is typically installed on the wall immediately next to your electrical panel. It could be in your garage or on the exterior of your home. And then the black boxes that are shown on the right are microinverters, and those are usually connected to 1 to 3 panels. And so both inverters and microinverters are great options and are installed in Oregon. Your contractor might suggest one over the other based on the needs of your system. Solar panels can be mounted either on your roof or as a ground mount. It's definitely more common in urban areas to see roof-mounted systems. If you do have more space, you might have a ground-mounted system, but it is good to remember that you still have to connect those panels to the rest of your system. So if you do have ground-mounted systems, there might be longer conduit runs. The vast majority of solar installed in Oregon looks like the panels here in this image, well, in the last image, but there is another technology that we're frequently asked about called solar shingles. And so this is a roofing product and also a solar panel. So multiple brands of solar tiles exist, but solar installation companies all don't necessarily work with solar tiles. So if this is something you're interested in, you'll want to make sure you're working with a contractor who has done this work before and is experienced with solar shingles and tiles. It can be a little bit more expensive, so that is something to keep in mind, but it is exciting to see new tech come out so that you have options. As mentioned earlier, when your system is producing excess electricity, it gets exported to the grid, where it can be utilized by other utility customers. So net metering is this process that allows you to account for the energy you export, so you can gain credit for it. This is why it's important to have a home solar system that matches your electricity consumption and needs. So we have a couple graphs here. One is showing a typical summer month, and the other is a typical winter month. So you can see on the summer month, you're producing a lot more, you have more access to solar resource, and so you are producing enough for what you're consuming. And so that little green arrow between the difference there is showing what you would be exporting from the grid or exporting to the grid. And then the graph on the right with the winter months is demonstrating that you might not have as much solar resource during the rainy winter months, but your consumption might go up as well. So you'll have a difference there of what you need to draw to the grid. And so that is just illustrating that you might need to pull. But something that's exciting about net metering is that it actually starts April 1st. So you can be banking a lot of credits during those sunny months, April through the summer, and then be able to use those credits as you get into the winter months. And then it's just important to remember that you can roll over those credits from month to month, but they do not roll over from year to year. So anything you don't use before the end of March 31st, before that year resets, would be forfeited. And that's why it's set up so that it starts before the summer months, so you can hopefully use those credits in the winter. Here's an example of what your monthly electricity bill might look like when using net metering. So this is an example of a PGE customer. In the box on the left, you can see the period for which you're being billed, the reading on your bidirectional meter at the beginning of the month, and the reading at the end of the month. So thanks to that bidirectional meter, the electricity you import from the grid is recorded separately from what you export, so that you can see the total number of electricity coming into your home this month was negative 327 kilowatt hours. This means you exported more than you earned. And so you have gained 327 kilowatt hours of credit that you can use later. Because you were a net exporter this month, your billable kilowatt hours is 0. But as you notice on the right side, your bill is not 0. So that is because there's a base connection charge to be connected to the utility. So it's usually about $12. And you can see here that it's just the standard flat $11 connection fee. And then there are some additional taxes and fees that get it to be $12. And so that's charges that all utility customers would be paying to maintain the grid. And then comparing this bill of $12 to an average of 70 or over 70 a month, it's a pretty good deal. And you can see that you are getting a lot of savings each month. All right, so a little bit more about system size. Solar is highly modular, and residential solar systems can vary depending on the needs of the customer and what you're looking to do with your solar system. So the size of a system is measured in a unit called kilowatt, or kW, and that average residential size in Oregon is about 8 to 10 kilowatt. And so how do we determine the size? Well, that'll be a conversation you have with your contractor, but they'll look at first how much electricity you consume. So they'll look at some of your past energy bills, and with net metering, you're going to want to match what you consume with what your system produces. So that way you are producing enough energy that you can match what you need without going over too much, since if you do export more than you need by a lot, you're kind of just sending that back out into the grid and wouldn't be using it. So you want to match but not exceed your estimated annual consumption. Other factors that could limit your system size are things such as available roof space, budget, HOA limitations, condo association limitations, things like that. Note that it is illegal in Oregon for HOAs to tell you you cannot go solar, but they can impose restrictions on how you go solar. For example, saying like, oh, you can't put it on the street facing roof. So that is something to consider. Usually solar contractors are pretty familiar working with HOAs, and we'll have some great ideas for you on how you can still go solar in your neighborhood. All right, now that we looked at how solar works, we're going to take a look at different aspects of your home that might make it easier or more difficult to go solar. Regardless of your location in the state, the orientation of your roof is a big impact on your solar access. So in this diagram here, you can see that the home and its orientation with respect to the cardinal directions. The arcs over the home show the path of the sun in the summer and in the winter. And regardless of the season, the sun will always be in the southern sky. So this means that south-facing roofs are ideal for solar. However, both west and east-facing roofs can work great. In cloudier parts of the state, roofs facing due east can be slightly less effective. This is because clouds tend to persist through early morning, blocking some of that early sunlight out. And then the only roof planes that consistently do not get installed on are usually the northwest and northeast facing. So even if you have a perfectly south-facing roof, you could have shade from other things like trees, illustrated in this picture here. So that might impact your ability to go solar. It's not bad to have those beautiful trees because they give you other benefits and cooling for your home. So let's say you are shaded, maybe ground mounting is something you can do, or you have an exterior building that you can mount on that's not shaded by trees. And then there is community solar as another option if you still want to be part of solar, but just don't have a roof that's compatible for it. Community solar is a route you can go. All right, and we talked a little bit about roof complexity. So that can also impact your ability to go solar. So you can see on the left is a really complex roof geometry, and on the right, you have a really simple roof. It's a lot easier to install a solar array on a simple roof where you can have more continuous rays that don't have to be broken up. Also, the pitch of the roof can impact how easy it is to go solar, or the cost of the solar array installation. And then roof condition and age, that is a huge factor. So we recommend that you have 20 plus years of roof life left before you install solar. That is because if you have to remove the solar to replace the roof, it's going to cost money to uninstall and reinstall the system. So it's just good to have a roof that'll last the duration of your solar panels. And then finally, what's underneath the roof can also affect how easy it is to go solar. So there's certain restrictions on pitch of roof and what kind of supports are needed to carry those solar panels. So that is something that when you have a site visit done, your contractor will talk to you about this. And if for some reason you do need some additional supports, just keep in mind that could be additional engineering costs. All right, now we'll jump right into home battery storage. It's important to know that your solar system by itself does not allow you to use your solar electricity during a power outage. To do this, you'd have to add a battery. This ability to use power when the grid is down is called energy resilience. And so solar and battery storage are complementary technologies. Solar makes the battery more effective by recharging it, and your battery allows you to access your solar independently from the grid. Here's an example of a home that has solar plus storage. And like we said earlier, solar is super modular and very customized based on your site and needs. So not all systems will look like this. Power outages can vary in their causes, frequency, and duration. So like a short power outage could be from squirrels or storms. A longer power outage could be from an extreme weather event, a fire or earthquake. So that's something to consider. It's important to know what type of outage you are expecting to endure so that your contractor can design a system that will meet your needs. And then just note that solar plus storage technology typically can provide power for short and medium length outages, but it can be prohibitively expensive to have enough juice in one battery to withstand a very long outage. We'll talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation. So when it comes to picking a battery, there are many good products on the market. However, due to manufacturer certification and requirements, many contractors might specialize in one brand. So it's just good to know that you can't mix brands, but you can mix different size batteries that are under the same brand. So most batteries have between 4 and 14 kilowatt hour of capacity. Some manufacturers have smaller units and some have larger units or like up to 20 kilowatt hours. The majority of batteries in the market right now are nickel, manganese, cobalt, or lithium iron phosphate. And then for standard household electrical loads, such as lights, appliances, many batteries will perform well. If you are intending to use a battery to back up a load that requires a lot of instantaneous power, like a motor, you'll want to let your contractor know that so they can factor that into the system design. All right, so partial versus home backup. It's very important to set your expectations properly about what a battery can do and what it cannot do. Even if you don't use much electricity, a single battery will almost never back up your entire home for a meaningful period of time. However, you can do what is called a partial home backup. So in this scenario, certain circuits in your home will receive power from the battery, but the rest of your home will lose power during an outage. If you're able and willing to front extra costs to have multiple batteries, that can allow you to achieve a whole home backup, but that process can be expensive. When you get a partial home backup, the way you divide your home into sections that are backed up and sections that are not backed up is based on the breakers in your electrical panel. So when you've selected what circuits you'd like to receive power during an outage, your contractor will remove those breakers and place them in a newly installed smaller central loads panel. And this second electrical panel will be wired to the battery. The battery system sizing process will entail a detailed conversation with your contractor, balancing your desire for functionality with available budget. So it's a good way to think of this is with two questions. So what needs power and for how long? Things that are commonly backed up are going to be a few outlets in a main area, the outlet for the refrigerator, so you can keep that on, as well as some lights in a common area. And if you're interested in installing a battery, when you install can affect both the system design and the price. There are some really good incentives for batteries right now, and you can access most of that potential by installing both at the same time. We'll dig a little deeper into incentives later. But basically, by the timing of the battery installation can affect the design of your solar system, is because, let's say you didn't plan for a battery and then you need to rearrange some components that can increase the cost, as well as just having that conversation with your contractor if you think you might want to have a battery later, letting them know so that you can take that into account with the system design. And then be aware that battery storage can require some dedicated physical space, since by National Electrical Code, batteries cannot be installed in crawl spaces, cupboards, or similarly confined spaces. And not all batteries are as big as the ones pictured in this image here. So yeah, just think about that when you are thinking about adding a battery, as you will need space. Usually they're installed pretty close to your electrical panel. All right, now we'll take a look at the incentives that are currently available. Please keep in mind, incentives do change pretty frequently with the industry. So if you really want to get in on the incentives that are out there now, it's good to contact a contractor and work on moving forward with the solar system, because we don't know which ones will be available later. So the first one we're going to talk about is the solar tax credit, or ITC. It's a dollar for dollar tax credit, meaning that you can reduce the taxes you owe by 30% the cost of your solar and or battery storage installation. This is an incentive that you don't get right away. You would have to apply for it once you file your taxes. And then just something to note is that if you don't owe enough taxes in the year that you installed your system, you can claim this credit over a few years, because you must have tax liability in order to get this credit. We are not tax professionals, so the information we're sharing is just for educational purposes. And if you want to take advantage of the tax credit, you should definitely discuss that with a qualified tax professional. There are a few things to know about the ITC. It covers the cost of both solar and battery storage, and it applies to traditional solar panels as well as solar roof tiles. It doesn't always apply to roof maintenance or roof repair or replacing a roof. So that would be something you would want to check with a tax professional. There's a lot of information online about the ITC, and not all of it is correct. So keep that in mind and do due diligence so that you make sure you take the most advantage out of this credit. Energy Trust of Oregon standard incentive solar credit is $400 for PGE customers, or $450 for Pacific Power. And then they have recently added a storage credit, which is $250 per kilowatt hour, up to $3,000 maximum, which is really great to see that come out, since having solar paired storage, you really can increase the energy resilience of your home and your community. So it's nice to see more credits focusing on battery storage. And then, so for these credits, you can receive the incentive whether you install solar and storage at the same time or separately. In order to receive the incentives, you must have your solar system and battery installed by a Energy Trust Trade Ally contractor. And we'll talk a little bit about this and how you would find one later in the presentation. And then if your utility is not PGE or Pacific Power, you will not qualify for Energy Trust of Oregon incentives, but you may receive additional incentives through your utility company. So the availability of these incentives varies, and it does change pretty frequently. So it's always good to come to webinars like this, where we update our content pretty frequently. But yeah, just make sure you are asking these questions of your contractors, and just keeping in mind that incentives and credits do change pretty frequently. All right, so beyond ITC and the Energy Trust standard incentives, There are 2 incentives that are available only to income qualified homeowners. One is the Energy Trust of Oregon Solar Within Reach incentive, which is a $1 per watt incentive. And it allows PGE and Pacific Power customers to reduce their installation costs by up to $6,000. And the income threshold for these qualifications is pretty generous. So this actually, if you're a household of 4, I believe it's increased to 120,000. You can check out the updated chart and the link in the chat. If you go to energytrust.org, they'll have their updated income thresholds there. So good to check to see if you can qualify for it, because it is another good option to help decrease the cost of solar and storage. And then the second income-based incentive in Oregon is the solar plus storage rebate. And so this provides up to $5,000 for solar and up to $2,500 for battery. It is good to know that you must install solar at the same time as storage in order to get that storage credit. And then something else that's really exciting is that this state rebate was extended for another 6 years. So there are additional funds available for non-LMI individuals as well. And we'll see that when we go through the budgets. And then reasons cost of solar might vary. So we talked a little bit about this, but just to recap, the size of the system can impact the cost. Re-roofing, structural analysis, and structural enforcement, if needed, could also impact the cost. And then for batteries, that cost can vary based on, how many batteries you're getting, what type of battery, what brand, as well as if you're installing solar and storage together. And then installation, thinking about that system design, if installation is far away from the rest of the components of your system, it could cost more for those conduit runs. And then if you are doing an essential loads panel or another panel like a smart electric panel, that could also increase the cost. So because there's so much ability to customize your system, those costs do vary pretty widely. All right, so now we're just going to go through some example budgets. Here you can see a sample budget for solar and storage. So for all of these budgets, we are just going with the average size of 8 kilowatt for the solar and 10 kilowatt hours for home battery storage. So just assuming one battery. And then before we jump into this one, let's talk about just the solar. So if we just did a solar system at 8 kilowatts, we're estimating the cost at $32,000. So again, this could vary for those reasons we discussed. But with that solar installation, you can access quite a few incentives. So the Energy Trust incentive you can see for different customer types. So we have Pacific Power in that second column, if you're PGE in the third column, if you are a Pacific Power customer who is income qualifying in the fourth column, and in the last column you can see if you're a PGE customer who is income qualifying. So the cost before incentives, $32,000, and then we can see the Energy Trust incentive. You can get from $400 all the way to $6,000 off, depending on what customer you are. And then the state rebate, since we now have more funding for that state rebate, you can also access that if you are not income qualifying, which is great because that really helps bring down the cost. And you can see that cost difference and the out-of-pocket cost to customer across the board. And then something that you wouldn't get right away is that federal tax credit. So when you then apply for your taxes that year that you did the installation, and are doing those, you would be able to claim 30% for that federal tax credit. And you can see that takes quite a large chunk off the cost there. So that's really helpful. So if you are just a Pacific Power customer, you could reduce your costs by over 10,000, and then going all the way to, if you're PGE income qualifying, you could decrease your cost by almost 50%. So it's really important to take advantage of the incentives that are available, so that you are making your cost for the system as low as it can be, and then you can pay it off faster. And then, so that's this solar budget for solar and storage. So we are assuming that same 8 kilowatt solar system, and then a 10 kilowatt hours battery storage for the same customer types. So we're estimating about 44,000 for that cost before incentives. And then we can see the Energy Trust incentives come up here. Because there is also a storage incentive, you can see that starting off incentive has really increased from that $400 to almost $3,000 since you're able to tap into the storage incentive as well. And then you can see under here, the state rebate, you could access more of that if you install solar and storage together at the same time. And then your out-of-pocket costs are decreased pretty significantly thanks to all those great incentives, and especially those ones focused on battery storage. And then you still get to claim your 30% federal tax credit, because that can be claimed on solar and storage. And then the final budget we're just going to walk through is if you add solar after having an existing, if you add storage after you have solar already. So we're still estimating the cost of the solar system to be about the same for that 8 kilowatt solar system. And then the cost of the battery, if you add it later, could be more, because you might have to rearrange your system, make changes to incorporate that battery. You can still access the Energy Trust incentives, as you can see here, and then the state rebate that you cannot access if you do not install solar and storage together. You could still get your 30% federal tax credit, but just important to know that if you do decide to add storage later, it could impact your costs. But there are such great incentives right now for battery storage that if you still wanted to add a battery later, it's more accessible than it's really been. So we like to see that and hope that we'll see some more costs for batteries going down. Now, financing your system. So there are a lot of options for this because it's such a large upfront cost. So we already looked at the incentives available, but there still is an out-of-pocket cost to the customer. So some homeowners can obtain a loan through the bank they already bank with, but some banks don't provide loans for solar storage. So that's important to think about. So you can check other banks as well. And then sometimes your contractor might partner with a specific credit union or third-party broker that offers a package to finance solar. So these types of loans may allow you to refinance when you claim the federal tax credit, or ITC, and that can help minimize the total interest you owe on your loan. And then just note that interest payments on your loan will not qualify for the tax credit. And then, as with any major financial decision, it's good to assess your options carefully and consult with a financial professional. And then we will take a look now at how to select a contractor and what to expect during installation. So we talked a little bit about Trade Allies, and so we'll dive a little deeper into that now. And I'll throw the links in the chat, and this has the link to the solar bid tool. And so what that is the Energy Trust of Oregon has pre-vetted contractors who are rigorously qualified. They're approved to offer the Energy Trust incentives, and they're also familiar with installation requirements. And so to access these trade allies, you can go to the solar bid tool on Energy Trust's website, and we also have that link in the chat. And you can put information and request a quote, and then you'll get a few quotes from contractors. It's great to compare at least 3 different contractor quotes. So if you can get that and you're in an area that has enough contractors to do that, we highly recommend that you compare quotes from at least 3 contractors. But this solar bid tool is just a great resource because you can quickly request a bid, and you know that you're going through trade ally contractors who are pre-vetted. Once you've selected your contractor and signed your contract, here's what you can expect regarding the installation process. Your contractor will handle all permitting, apply for Energy Trust of Oregon state incentives on your behalf, and design your system. Although system design can be quick, some jurisdictions have different permitting, and so just important to keep in mind that sometimes permitting could have some delays. We have seen these delays come down recently. But once everything is permitted and ready to go, installation is just about 1 to 2 days, so really not too long. And after your system is installed, your contractor will manage your permit, and the inspections, coordinate the installation of your new bidirectional meter, and schedule your interconnection with the utility. So this can take a couple weeks, and then after you're interconnected, your system will be up and running and producing clean and renewable power from the sunlight falling on your roof. So we'll just head right into Q&A. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat now, or in the Q&A. And then in the chat, there's those resource links if you do need to pull any of those to either request a bid or learn more from one of those resources. So I'll just give it a couple minutes here to allow everybody to put some questions in the chat, and then we'll go through quick Q&A, and that's all I've got for you today. So while I let those questions come in, I'm going to run the last poll, just seeing how we did today so we can keep making our education better and better. Great. Thank you all for that. We'll go ahead and end the poll, and then get right into the questions. So let's see. We've got a question on what incentives are there for bank of battery only. So if you're just getting a battery only, you can access Energy Trust's storage incentive, which was $250 per kilowatt hour. Let's see. As a homeowner and the installer, can I still get an incentive? So if you are a trade ally, you can still get the Energy Trust incentives, but you have to be part of that trade ally network to get those incentives from Energy Trust. You should still be able to claim the federal tax credit. And then, yeah, so, but you still want to work with a tax professional to make sure you can claim that. Great. I'll just hang back here for just a few more minutes to see if there's any other questions that come through. And thank you all for joining today. Appreciate you taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.